Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, How to Balance Success with Buyers and Success at Home with MAPS coaches Jen Davis and Sarah Detmore. Please note this webinar is being recorded and you will automatically receive the webinar recording. If you have questions for your coach, please type them into the questions box located in your webinar taskbar. Following the webinar, if you have any questions about today's call or coaching programs, please email us at fasttrack@kw.com. That's fasttrack@kw.com. That's all for me, ladies. Take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carlos. And hello, everybody, and good morning or afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. It's still morning here in Houston. I'm in Central Time Zone, and Jen's in Springfield, Missouri. So it's morning for both of us. But we're so excited to have you guys with us today as we talk through how to balance success with buyers and success at home, which is kind of a unique topic that, Jen, we haven't really touched on much because it kind of gets into a personal space, which is interesting. So before we get started, we really want to just introduce ourselves and let you guys know who we are. So Jen, why don't you kick us off and tell everybody who you are and where you're from?
Sure. So my name is Jen Davis. I am a MAPS coach. I am also the CEO of Holt Homes Group in Springfield, Missouri. Our team closes over 500 units a year. Kind of our model is more of a team dependent model. So we've got 20 people on our team last year that closed 538 units. But of those 538 units, of those 20 people, only 6 of our people are in production. So we really structure our team in a way where everybody's running in their strength zone. You're either in production or you're admin or you're in lead generation. We also are pretty significantly specialized in buy side versus list side. So not dissimilar to really how you guys are running your team, right, Sarah?
Yeah, definitely. And so just real quick, I'm Sarah Detmore. I'm with the Loken Group out of Houston, Texas, and I'm the VP of our buyer agent team. We have a team of 10 buyer agents. Last year in 2020, we closed 426 buyer units. And just like Jen mentioned with Holt Homes Group, the Loken Group's similar, where we really have everybody on our team in a role that they are going to thrive in. We have buyer agents, listing agents. We have a whole inside sales team that does all of our lead generation and follow up. We have a success team, an admin team. I mean, we're pushing 100 people with the Loken Group. So we have a really big team here in Houston, and as an entire team, we did over 2,500 units in 2020. 426 of those, of course, were buyer units. And just like Jen, I serve as a MAPS group coach and have the opportunity of co-coaching a fabulous group program called Mega Buyer Agent with the one and only Jen Davis. And as Carlos said at the beginning of the call, guys, drop your questions in the chat box or question box. We'll be monitoring that throughout the webinar here, and we only have 30 minutes. So we want to make sure we get into our content real quick, because for those of you who know Jen and I, we could talk forever. So before we get started with the content, Jen, what's important about us really spending some time and talking about how we balance working with buyers and also just success at home? What's important about that?
Well, number one, the impact that we make on our friends and our family and our relationships is the number one most important thing. I think any of us would agree on that, right? And what tends to happen is that those people or those relationships, if you specifically work with buyers or as you're in real estate, those are the relationships that can get damaged. Those are the relationships that can get pushed aside so that we can work with more buyers, right? It's very easy to say no to your family or to maybe show up late or to be on your phone at dinner while you're taking a call or a text message or taking a text message or showing one more property. And so I think you and I come at this from a little bit of different perspectives. Our kids are different ages. Mm-hmm. I missed the boat when I was growing our business. When I look back on, why am I a group coach? People ask me that all the time. Why do I do it? My goal in all of this is to help prevent somebody else from potentially making the same mistakes that I made. Sometimes in production, you'll hear a lot about that in the Mega Buyer Agent class, sometimes in personal life, right? And so when I look at things from the perspective of a buyer's agent and not giving up on those relationships, for me, it was work became a refuge, right? When I was running our buy side and, 2 showing agents were closing 225 deals a year, work became a way to avoid an uncomfortable situation at home. Mm-hmm. And when you when you do that, the uncomfortable situation can fester and grow worse. Instead of investing your time and your talent at home, sometimes it's easier to invest your time and your talent at work. And so I have made a mind shift change over the last several years where my kids are my number one priority. My friendships are my priority. My faith is my priority. And the work stuff we can build efficiencies around. And I think sometimes as a buyer's agent, we get into a reactive position and we're willing to give of ourselves and our time to everybody else. And what ends up happening are those relationships that are most important to us are the ones that can drop. So my goal with today is to give people, one or two ideas on how to build a bunker around their family time and to make sure that you can understand that you can have a great big buyer business. You can also have a great family life at the same time. So Sarah, tell me, you're in a different spot. So tell me your perspective of why this is an important topic.
Yeah, and first of all, Jen, I love your honesty and transparency, and I trust that people who are joining us on our webinar today think the same thing, right? You and I are both human. We're both moms. We both have kids. We both run teams that produce at a high level. And I agree with you. It's when you have the right mindset, the right systems, and set the right expectations, things that you and I love to talk about is expectations, right? You can have that successful big business, whether it's a real estate business, any business, when you have the right pieces in place. And I know you always talk about being where your feet are, which we'll talk about in the webinar today. I, again, have three very small children. I have a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-month-old. She'll be 1 month old tomorrow. And when my husband and I started our family, my priorities at work changed. And I love what you shared, Jen. It's, you can use work as a refuge and work to avoid some uncomfortable things at home. And then that just starts to snowball into other things. And I'm sure we aren't the only ones who have lived through that, right? Especially with kids and schedules. And, I think for me, why this is an important topic, if I had to answer it in one sentence, it would be the moment that my now 5-year-old, I think he was 2 or 3 at the time, we were doing his bedtime routine and he brought me my cell phone. And I was like, oh no, this is a problem, right? And so again, Jen and I want to talk about some of the failures we've experienced. That's how we have been able to, to build some systems and set some expectations in ways that maybe we didn't before, and we failed forward. So that's kind of why this is an important topic for us. And we're so glad that you guys are here today to kind of help, listen through this, and hopefully you'll take something away that you can implement in your business now that can help make things, better or different for you and your business as well. So let's get into this, Jen. With expectations and boundaries, right, is something that you and I, it's almost becoming a joke now, because I think anyone who's joined us on a webinar before or joined us in our group program, we always talk about expectations and boundaries. And it seems so simple, and it kind of is when you set those right expectations, right? We all, those of us who on the webinar who have been through BOLD, we know that there's that BOLD law. You teach people how to treat you, and that is so true. When you jump and you run and you answer every text and every phone call and every email at the drop of a hat, sure, the sense of urgency can be appreciated by your clients, but the expectation you're setting there is that you're always available. And that's when you start getting phone calls and emails and text messages at midnight or 4 a.m. or 6 a.m., just different hours throughout the day. And it kind of blows things out of proportion in a really funky way with that relationship with the buyer. So keep in mind, guys, that you do teach people how to treat you. And in addition to that, it's okay for you to teach people how to treat you, right? That's what something I want you guys to take away or even write down. It's okay for you to have these conversations up front with your buyer, so that way you do have that time at home for yourself, for your family, for your mental health, for goodness sake, right? So just keep that in mind as we go through this conversation today. And guys, when your buyers know what to expect from you, they're more likely to respect your boundaries. On the next slide, Jen's going to take us through some scripts on how we can set some really clear boundaries with our buyers. And some of those expectations and boundaries, guys, can look like how you communicate with them. Right? Does the buyer prefer text, email, phone calls? We want to establish those expectations on communication in terms of the format of the communication, the timeliness of the communication, right? Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, between the hours of 4 and 8 p.m., that's my mom time. That's my family time. And that's really the only few hours a day that I spend with my family all together. So during those hours, you might not hear from me right away, but it's okay. I'll check email one more time after 8 p.m. If things are urgent, I might check in then. If not, you'll hear from me tomorrow morning. And the good news is it's all going to be okay. Right? You can set expectations with your buyers on what may or may not be an emergency. A buyer who's under contract on a property might think that every little thing is an emergency. Okay. We just had 2 weeks ago in Houston, we had a unbelievably cold weather, 15 degrees, which doesn't happen in Texas, guys. And one of the really funky things right now is that buyers are wanting to know if sellers are going to replace the landscaping on the property that all died because it froze, right? Like that's not an emergency, but to a buyer, that might be an emergency. And that's an expectation we want to set at the very beginning of the relationship with the buyer to make sure that those kind of phone calls and conversations don't derail your family time or your personal time. Right. And you see here it says set expectations with your family too. That could look like you sitting down with your family, right? Jen, with your kids being older than mine, my kids don't understand. They don't even know what I do for a living. But with my husband, right? When I was in production and had to, a high client load that I carried and a high level production I was expected to do, he and I scheduled out certain days of the week that I worked late and showed houses. I didn't work Saturday and Sunday. It looked like it was either Saturday or Sunday, but he and I had those conversations. And so that way we knew who was in charge of the kids when, and that's okay, right? He understood the nature of the business of what I do for a living and supports me. And that's the most important thing. And we're able to work out those expectations as a family to make sure that that didn't turn into, something bigger than it was. So expectations and boundaries, always critical. Jen, anything you want to add to that?
Well, I think you touched on it really well. The conversation is the relationship. And when we talk about expectations, that's Sarah and I's way of telling you guys, be clear in your communication with your clients. What do they expect from you? When do they expect it? And the same goes with your kids. My kids are 9 and 14. They are older. I can say to them, hey guys, I am in the middle of a multiple offer situation. We are competing against 13 other buyers. I normally would not keep my phone on me, and in this circumstance for the next 30 minutes I have to have it. I've set the expectation. They understand, to the extent that they understand it, what's going on, why it's important, and that it's a one-time thing. This isn't our normal anymore. I've gotten away from it being the norm to have my phone with me at all times. And in certain circumstances, it's okay to do that. When Sarah was referencing the landscaping, what she's saying is she cannot do anything about that at 9 p.m. at night. Not now, is she going to handle it at 9 a.m. the next day? Of course she is. There's going to be clear communication, but because she's set the expectations correctly, because she's had the conversation and built the relationship. When we're talking about relationship with our clients, we're talking about being their fiduciary. We're the professional, we're the expert in the field, we're not their friends. So Sarah set the expectation with them of, I'm going to handle it, and I'm going to handle it better than any other person could within these parameters. So I think that when we talk about relationships, we need to understand there are a variety of different relationships that you can set expectations within. So
beautifully said.
Thanks.
And we have some scripts to go along with setting expectations and boundaries, Jen, right?
We do. So, scripting is a big thing. I know, Sarah, that you guys are, that you guys do scripts and dialogues and role play and all of that stuff on the Loken group. And we do too. That is something that we practice every day. Mm-hmm. These scripts, the more you practice them, the more you're going to feel confident in them, and the more they're going to translate to the buyer or land the way you mean them to land, right? If they come across as genuine and they're not scripted, it becomes second nature for these to become part of your buyer consultation. So the first one is pretty simple. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I want to respect your time because I know how valuable it is. That part of it is saying, you're important to me, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. Your time is important to me. I'm curious which days and times work best for you to view homes. So what we're doing is we're isolating when they want to look. If they say, I really prefer to look in the afternoons, every buyer agent around the world is clapping their hands, right? That it's not evenings and weekends. Now, if they say, I have to look after 5 and I have to look on Saturday, then we use the advice that Sarah gave us on the last slide and we say, okay, which evenings? Okay, is it Saturday or is it Sunday? And then we forward paste them onto our calendar. So I'm not going to show them every night of the week. I'm going to offer them Tuesday, which I've already, if I'm Sarah, have cleared with my husband to watch the kids, because that's the night I'm going to show property. So if they say I've got to look after 6, perfect. I have an availability Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Would that work for you? It is getting control of the conversation. Nothing's going to change about their schedule based on us asking the question. All we're doing is isolating it and then getting them on the calendar so that we can make sure that it fits with our personal life. And then you might say, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, typically speaking, my evenings and weekends tend to book up quickly. I want to make sure that I can get you into properties as quickly as possible since the market is moving so quickly. Can we preset an appointment to make sure that we have a spot reserved? So this is really powerful on a weekend. So the same could be said if I know that I'm going to work on Saturday, but I'm not going to work on Sunday. And a buyer says to me, I would like to look Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, unfortunately, I'm already booked. Would there be any possibility of you going Saturday afternoon at 1 o'clock? I'm saying I'm booked. They don't need to know with what. Again, they're not my friends. They're not my family. They're my business relationship. I'm already booked on Sunday at 1. I'm also worried the house isn't still going to be available by Sunday at 1. Could you go Saturday at 1? If you wanted to reverse that, you can script around anything to push buyers where you need them to be on your calendar. And then, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I'm so excited to get to work with you. In the event that I'm in an appointment, I will call you as soon as I'm available. Just know that if it is after 8 p.m., it may be the next morning before I can respond. I always want to make sure that I'm in front of a computer with access to your file before I respond to any questions. What I'm saying to them is I'm not going to look something up on my phone. Again, the appointment might be dinner with my kids. An appointment might be when we used to be able to go to happy hours, a happy hour with my team. Those types of things may still be considered an appointment. And what I'm doing is I'm setting the expectation that if they call me at 7:50, they probably won't hear from me till the next day. And at the same time, they know what to expect, that I will always call back the next morning.
You know, and Jen, I love these scripts because they're simple, right? They're not complicated scripts. They're genuine. It can be very easy for us to have this very genuine, very honest conversation with our buyers in the consultation when we first meet them, because we want to set these expectations in that moment because we're also building that relationship. And it's interesting because, you know, just personally, I've used some of these scripts similar to these or these exact scripts before, and I've had buyers reach out to me in the hours I told them I wasn't available, and they would say things like, hey, Sarah, this isn't urgent. I know you're with your family. Respond when you can. So they start to honor that, and plus it makes us human, guys. We're not robots. We're not people who are on schedule, on call all the time. And I know as buyer agents, especially in this crazy market that it seems like we're all in, one thing that kind of scares us is, well, if I say no, I'm going to lose the buyer. And my advice here, guys, is so what? If that buyer is not going to respect your family time and your personal time, perhaps that's a buyer that you shouldn't work with anyway.
And Sarah, I found that if I've set the expectations, there's very rarely a buyer that I've lost later.
Right.
The ones that I don't set the expectations with, that I am on demand, right? Like I'm Netflix for them. They can talk to me, pull something up anytime they want to. They can whatever. If I have not set the expectations with them, those are the buyers that I am worried about losing, and typically the ones that I get frustrated with.
Right.
It's never been the ones that I've done a great job on expectations that I have any fear of that are not going to utilize my services because I've not answered my phone at 9 p.m.
Very good point. And I love that you shared that too. So guys, just those scripts are going to be in this recording. You're all going to get a copy of this recording if you want to use those scripts later. We want to move on though, because again, I'm watching the time, and I know, like I said, Jen and I can go for hours on this if we need to. So we only have 30 minutes. And so another thing we want to make sure we're doing, guys, to achieve that work-life balance, you know, between working with buyers and success at home, is you want to control your calendar. And this to me always seems like it's easier said than done, because we can always just beautifully block stuff on our calendar, and it's the blocking of the calendar itself plus your discipline to following your schedule. Okay. Those two things have to go hand in hand for your calendar to actually, set you up for success in business. And we all know that Gary tells us when we're doing our time blocking to block personal and family time first. And we can't stress this enough, guys. When you have family time a few nights a week or one day a weekend or vacations or trips or things, that all goes in your calendar first because we want to block other things around that. The next thing that should go in your calendar is your lead generation and your lead follow-up time, because no matter what your business looks like, no matter the day, no matter the month, you must lead generate and lead follow-up, because if you don't have lead generation and lead follow-up, you won't have appointments to go on. And then you fill in the appointments and showings around that. And like Jen mentioned earlier, with forward pacing your calendar and some scripting around that, whenever you're leaving your buyer consultation, you want to leave that buyer consultation with your first showing appointment set with that buyer. And I know, Jen, I've gotten some pushback from buyers who would say, well, how can we agree to meet on Saturday at 1 o'clock if I don't have any houses I want to see yet? Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, finding the houses is the easy part, right? We want to make sure that we're getting you on the schedule now so we can, we can make sure that we have dedicated time for us to get together and home shop for you. My concern is that if we wait until Saturday morning to agree to see houses Saturday afternoon, our schedules aren't going to align. And as my client, I want to make sure that you have priority on my calendar. And then again, commit to that schedule, guys, because we have to make sure not only do we time block it, that we follow that schedule with a discipline. And that's kind of, again, how those two things go hand in hand. So Jen, anything you want to add to controlling the calendar?
That was awesome. I love that.
Yeah, and you might hear my baby crying in the background. So just like, let's be okay with that for a minute, guys. Not a big deal.
It's not just the time block, it's also the discipline to follow it. I'm honestly
to follow it. Yep.
Pretend it was mine.
So when we get to, we got our calendar, we got our scripts. I know, Jen, we talk a lot about leverage, in our mega buyer agent group coaching program. And I know that I kind of refer to you and other people I know too as the queen of leverage. So talk to us about, what, not necessarily what leverage looks like on a granular level, but what leverage could do for us and really what holds some of us back from looking into leverage opportunities.
I think leverage, most people hear leverage and the first thing they think of is an administrative assistant or a showing partner or somebody to help with lead generation, which you and I get, we do a deep dive into in our 6-week program. Guys, when we're talking about home and work-life balance, it can mean somebody to help clean your house. It can mean somebody to mow your lawn. I can remember when I very first started my first year at KW, that I was on pace to close 50 houses. And I can remember wanting to take Thursdays off to clean my house because Saturdays and Sundays were too busy, right? I wanted to spend time with my family or I was in showings. And I can remember the founder of my company saying to me, but I mean, if you just spent the whatever, $150, $200 to get your house cleaned, and you went and sold one house on Thursdays, number one, your house would be clean. And number two, you wouldn't be the one that had to do it, right? So start to think about leverage a little bit differently. It doesn't have to be work related. It could be somebody to run errands for you or meal prep for you. And I think the myths around it is number one, that we don't need it. Guys, I'm here to tell you, we can do a lot of things. We can do a lot of things and we can be a lot of things to a lot of people, but we cannot be all things to all people. And I will tell you that I embrace leverage probably faster than anybody that you've ever met. I will have leverage in my personal life. I will have leverage at work, because what I have found is that number one, there are things I'm not very good at. And there are people that do those things I'm not good at better than I do them. So what I've learned about leverage is I absolutely need it. And I can always afford it. If I'm strategic in when I'm adding leverage, I can always afford it. So it may be something small of, maybe a house cleaner, or maybe somebody to mow your lawn, or maybe it's somebody to put out open house signs. If we want to get into some business things that are small pieces of leverage, if we can gain an hour of our time back, what can we do with that hour? I recently read a book and they said, it's hard to be famous at home if you're never there. And I was like, oh, stuck with me, right? If you're never at your house, the memories that your kids or your family members are going to have of you is that you were always gone. And so some of those things of buying back your time, open house signs, meal prepping, having groceries delivered. That's just a service that a grocery store provides. Any of those types of things, if that gives you an hour back with your family per day, that's a very good investment. And I think those are some examples. I mean, those are my off the top of my head examples of leverage. Sarah, what for you would that be?
You know, and I agree with, I mean, everything that you say always. However, for you know, the grocery delivery, right? That's been a big piece of leverage. I think a lot of us have experienced when COVID started a year ago, you know, and we kind of had to go the grocery delivery route. You know, I honestly can't wait to go to Target again. Let's just put that out there. I would love to go to Target and just wander around, but now I'll just have my stuff delivered because I'm home with a newborn, and I, you know, just priorities have changed, and it's little things like that that compound over time, right? You said, Jen, it's something that you and I both know we need because we've experienced it in a positive way, right? It's, some people might think of leverage as, oh, well, I can just put out my open house signs. It doesn't take long, right? It doesn't take long. If you host 3 open houses a week and you're saving yourself an hour three times a week and get 3 hours back in your week, what could you do with those extra 3 hours? So it's important to think about how the time that you save compounds over time, and how much, you know, and also what you do with that time that you buy back or that you earn back. If you choose to take a nap or go to a movie when you could be doing a buyer consultation, like that's kind of where the balance has to come in, where you have to be strategic, like you said, Jen, about how you use that time that you're earning back into your world. So I love everything that you said.
So Sarah, I mean, you said that leverage isn't a luxury unless you treat it that way. So Sarah, you invest your time in something else. Could I sell one more house if I had 3 more hours to show? I could. I could. I'm not probably going to go take a nap as much as I would like to. I'm probably but I think people look at leverage as this luxury that one day they'll get there. The other part of the grocery delivery is how much money are you saving by not actually going to the grocery store and buying the 12 packs of at the end of the, you know, at the checkout.
Exactly. So lots of things to consider though, but right, leverage could look different to everybody. We actually had a listing agent on our team who was our top producing listing agent. He thought outside the box and he hired a driver to drive him to all of his appointments, and the time that he used in the car to respond to, you know, phone calls and texts and emails. Houston's a big territory, guys. We cover all 9 counties of Houston, so it could take any of our agents an hour and a half to get from one appointment to the next. And so he chose to leverage a driver and get his admin work done in the car while he was being driven to his appointments. So when he got home in the evening, he could focus on his family. And I thought that was really cool because that's kind of a unique piece of leverage. So anyhow, guys, we're coming to the half hour and want to make sure we respect everybody's time. And we want to make sure we also share some great information with you about our group program that we are launching on April 7th, which is just a little over a month away. It's a Wednesday. Our calls, Jen, are at 11 o'clock in the morning Central Time, right?
Yes, they are. Same time as we started this one.
Same time as this webinar, guys. And we, you know, definitely look into the content of the program. It's a great program for any buyer agent who's really just starting their business or looking to grow their business in some different ways. You know, Jen and I have been working this program together with MAPS for, gosh, has it been 3 years now? 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, ish.
And every time we launch it, we have new content, right? It's the similar fundamentals and principles of running a buyer business or just being a buyer agent. However, we want to make sure we're also bringing in relevant content to, you know, the market, and things have changed since we launched this program last year. So it's a 6-week program. Again, our target audience, of course, is buyer agents or anybody who's on a team that or looking to start a team and maybe bring on a buyer agent. We'll talk through how to set goals and track your numbers and time block. We'll really dig into a buyer consultation, and that's when you'll hear Jen and I talk all about scripts and expectations and boundaries and all those things at kind of a deeper level. We'll talk about lead gen and how to build a pipeline of buyers, leverage with some lead gen. Something that I think a lot of buyer agents are curious to know about is our showing partner model and what that looks like for you as a buyer agent. And of course, we spend some time talking about hiring talent, because we want to make sure we're kind of hitting all the different angles of being a buyer agent, and also those lead buyer agents who want to grow maybe a buyer team in the future with their rainmaker. So lots of great content in that program. And again, on the next slide here, just some more information about when we launch, the time frame. The investment, guys, is just $198. And again, it's a 6-week program. starts April 7th, and you can go to mapscoaching.com/group for more information and to sign up. Or of course, you can always reach out to Jen and I directly. We're pretty accessible. You know, y'all can reach me at sarah@thelokengroup.com. And then Jen, I don't know if you want to share your email address as well, but I know we're both pretty available to answer any questions that you guys have.
Yep, my email address is jendavispw@gmail.com. And part of the other thing that comes with this program is you will have a script book by the end of it. So it's a great opportunity to build out your script book. This time we actually included a tracker. So if you've not been tracking numbers, this would help you get that started. So it's all good content. And then you get to hear Sarah and I talk to each other for an hour every week.
Yes. And it's on Zoom, so we all get to hang out together, right? Our high eyes want to hang out together. And you know, Jen, I don't know if we have time for a couple of questions here in the box. I know it's the half hour, but there's one or two questions in here that I think might be worth addressing. So let's see, Beth says, in this market, we don't have the luxury of booking appointments out several days ahead. When a property is available, we have to jump on it immediately, and that is tough on our family for sure. I totally get that. And Beth, one thing that I would suggest there is when you're in these consultations and setting these expectations with your buyers, it's okay to let them know that in this crazy market, we may not have the luxury of walking through a property before we make an offer, right? If you like a house based on pictures, location, price, all the things that we see online, we may have to submit an offer before we can step foot inside the house to take a look.
We're also doing searches multiple times a day so that we're seeing them faster, so that way we can get into it before anybody else is getting into it.
And then another question that was on here, let's see, Steve kind of asked a similar question about, you know, how would you suggest handling the crazy market where buyers need to view a new listing immediately? I think there's a couple different ways you could handle that. Like we just said, you know, Steve, I would encourage you to, when you're meeting these new buyers and setting expectations, it's, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, in our market, we may have to make an offer sight unseen. Here's what that looks like. And talk them through how you've been successful at that in the past. The buyers who want to be in this market right now will be open to that idea. Not every buyer will want to make an offer sight unseen, but that's one expectation that you could set that may help eliminate some of the jumping and running.
And very few listings are going live at 8 p.m. I mean, most of these listings are going live during the day. They're holding offers for a certain period. So just also keep that in mind. If just, you know, you can time block in, if you have one or two hot buyers, time block them in towards the end of each of your days. That way, if something pops up, you're ready to roll.
Yep, I love that. And again, Jen, for the sake of time, this is stuff that we really do a deep dive in on our group program, because we do spend a whole day talking about a buyer consultation and what those expectations look like. We talk about showings, we talk about all the fun nuances that we have as buyer agents and in this crazy seller's market. And, you know, Jen, I don't know about you, I don't anticipate the market shifting in any capacity between now and April 7th when we kick off our group program. So
none at all. And we're adding new scripts about multiple offers and how to win in them. So, I mean, that would all of this would get handled in that.
Yeah, definitely. So guys, thank you so much for joining us. I know this was short and sweet, but and thank goodness that my 1-month-old has slept the whole time. Like, that's a huge win for me, and we'll see what the rest of the day looks like. But thank you again for joining us. We trust that you took something away from this this webinar you can implement into your business immediately. If you have any questions or concerns or anything about anything buyer related, reach out to Jen and I. We are here for you guys as a resource, and we are excited to see you guys on April 7th when we launch our Mega Buyer Agent Group Program. So anything else, Jen?
Nope, that's it. Have a good day, Sarah.
Awesome. See you guys later. Bye, everybody.